It is my reparations and I want them now. That's how I feel when I'm talking about
freedom.
Please. How did we get here?
How did we get here?
Yeah, how did we get here? Everybody wants to fight the good fight, or seems like they fight the good fight, but there are people like you who are actually doing so. So, like, how did we get here?
My full-time work now is to organize resources for liberation. I do that in a couple of different places. I have my own consulting practice called Freedom Futures where I do that. But then I also do it as a senior advisor to Liberated Capital, which is a fund that we're going to talk about here today.
Yeah,
working.
Oh, sure. Because can I get one of those? I don't need that.
You could.
I would love a shirt like this.
We're gonna get you one. We're gonna get you one.
I have a t-shirt that I like wearing when I go traveling, especially through the airport, and it says "Not today, colonizer."
That part.
First, about what actually is reparations.
Yeah, so reparations, kind of in really simplistic terms, it's about repair. It's about repairing harm that has been caused by the enslavement of people, specifically folks of African descent, and harm caused by the extraction of land and resources from indigenous communities as well. And so essentially this country, the US, was founded on this kind of premise and this approach of extraction and genocide. And so in order to right those wrongs, we have to go through a process of deep, thoughtful, intentional repair. And repair is a couple of things. One, the country needs to own its legacy of what it has done to Black and Indigenous folks in the US, but then also across the diaspora, right? But then two, it needs to pay, right? Yeah. Because that harm caused centuries of economic disenfranchisement, racial injustice, and genocide of Black and Indigenous and people of color in this country. And so reparative action for those harms, reparations, is about returning back the money. And it is returning it back because you stole it, essentially. Returning that money back and returning that land back. Without us really defining and talking about it as reparations, we actually talk about aspects of reparative harm related to economic disenfranchisement all the time in other ways, right? And it's less upfront, it's less direct. It's like, how do we talk about education equity? How do we talk about adequate funding for healthcare? How do we talk about affordable housing? All of these things are part of repair for that has been caused by economic extraction based on racialized privilege and racialized violence towards Black folks and Indigenous folks in this country. And so reparations is just like putting it front and center, and then also saying that part of this is about healing, right? Like this is about healing and repair as well. We at Liberated Capital and Decolonizing Wealth Project, which is with whom I work, we have been learning a lot in the last couple of years around, okay, how can we support this work, this kind of emerging ecosystem of communities that are trying to figure this out, who are actually trying to fight and win something at a local level. And frankly, also trying to win and make changes at a national level. And so, there's been a lot of things happening. And there are a couple of examples. I don't know if any of these things have come across your radar, but in places like Bruce's Beach or Manhattan Beach, California, look, this community, there was a Black family that owned a property, a beachfront property in Manhattan Beach 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, that was then just taken from them, right?
Just
taken. After 15 years of owning this land, the city, knowing the worth and the value of this land, knowing that this Black family that owned it stood to make a lot of money and to sustain themselves and their families for generations to come, redlined basically the early versions of that and took the land from them, taking away all of that economic opportunity and the rights to that land. That land was just returned to them a month or so ago. And so that was an act of repair. It was a fight for a reparation. And that fight was about a specific harm to a specific group of people that led to a specific intervention or repair, which was returning that land back to that family. We see that happening across the country, full stop.
What does it look like to go towards evening the playing field at large? Is it too big of a task?
Yeah, it's definitely not too big of a task. I think this country, this world, frankly, has figured out much bigger things and has even at the kind of national foreign policy level around so-called security, right? Like money falls from the sky when it comes to talking about military budgets.
And the way police across the country have robots and to just play with and do whatever.
Right? And in 2020, that taught us that too, right? Like we were told in April that there was no money for personal protection equipment for healthcare workers. But then come May, come June, when the uprising started, all of these police were in riot gear, brand new riot gear, fresh out the box.
Fresh. That's what I'm like, are we able to actually get to this point when the government, the powers that be keep showing us, yeah, we got money, but this is where it goes.
Right. Congress finally passed infrastructure bill that's over $1 trillion. Amidst, lots of fighting and what have you, but we're at this place where we can find $1 trillion, right? We're about to have the first trillionaire in Elon Musk, right? This multi-billionaire. So there are ways, to your point, reparations to the rest of us is going to require a national program. And for us to invest in researching national models for repairing harm caused by centuries of extraction and disenfranchisement and neglect, right? Racial, economic rooted neglect and harm to Black and Indigenous peoples. In 2019, we launched Liberated Capital, which is a funding collaborative, a donor community, where we said we're going to model something differently of how we actually move money as well. Let's teach the field that we can move money in a very decolonized way, where you're centering the experiences of most impacted, and specifically Black and Indigenous peoples, versus the metrics and missions and drivers for institutional foundations, right?
Yeah.
Let's center those who need to benefit from these funds to begin with. And let's make the turning over those funds part of the process of healing itself, right? Because we need healing, but those that have the funding and those who amass this wealth, they need healing as well. They may not know it, but they need healing as well. And so Decolonizing Wealth Project and Liberated Capital are two efforts to move those efforts forward. The actual act of turning over funds, letting go of power, that is, once you get folks there, it's pretty simple, right? Once there is
but they don't lose anything, right?
They don't lose a thing. They lose power. I mean, that's the thing. They have to share power. And so much of this is about sharing power and sharing resources. For us, it's about giving it back, right? Yeah. And the truth is, without repair, we're never going to move forward as a country and as a people if we don't really focus in on repair.
It is my reparations and I want them now. That's how I feel when I'm talking about
freedom.
Please.